So now that we have a player character and a platform for them to be able to run around in, and we've checked that the platform works okay, it's possible to complete, the next step is to add the portal. And the portal will be a way for the player to get from this level to the next level. So to do that, we need a couple of things. We need to draw a portal sprite. We also need to add code. And of course, we need to add a new level. We can't have the portal sending the player to a new level if it doesn't exist yet. So let's start with the new level. To do this, we click on the platform sprite, and then at the top left, we click on costumes. Now, you might remember when we started this, we had this first costume here called level 1. And then we duplicated that a few times before we started filling it in, so we have this border. If you didn't do that, you can still copy level 1 by duplicating it, and then simply use the selection box here to remove the contents, remove all these obstacles inside, and then you can draw new ones. So I'm going to click on the second costume, and I'm going to rename this level 2. And you'll keep doing this same process, so you'll go underneath that, and the next one will be called level 3, and so on. So you're just going to be doing that this same process each time you want to add a new level. So once we've got level 2 here and we've named it, we can start to add in the obstacles. So again, I'm going to be aware of where the player is for the moment. Later on, I will show you how you can add in some extra code so that the player can start in different places for each level. But for the moment, we'll keep things simple. So I'm going to add some obstacles here for the player to jump on. So these are some steps that they're going to jump on. Then we'll have a platform over here, then another step for them to jump on over there. Then we'll have a longer obstacle with some things for them to jump over and avoid, like that. Then we'll have some other steps coming down here, and then the portal will be down in this area, just there. And then we can just add some other random bits along here to confuse the player. There we go. So that's the second level. So now we've drawn the second level, and really importantly, we've named it. Let's now create a new sprite for the platform. So in the sprites box down here, we're going to click on the sprite icon there. And again, you can find a picture on the internet and upload it. You can search for a sprite that's built within Scratch, or for the moment, we're just going to draw everything ourselves. So we're going to click on Paint. I'm going to choose purple, I think, for this. So we'll choose a purple color there. And I'm just going to keep it simple for the moment. So I'm going to have it as a square. Now I'm holding Shift down so I get a perfect square, same as when I wanted a perfect circle. If you don't hold Shift down, then you can draw any shape you like. Holding Shift keeps it to a perfect square. Now also remember that when we draw sprites, it's really, really important that the middle part of the sprite is directly over this little dot in the middle of the screen. And if we zoom in, you can see that little dot is a target. So we find the middle of the sprite and we move it directly over that little dot there, so we know that's in position. If we have a look on the right-hand side, we can see our portal there. It's a little bit big, so let's reduce that. Let's try about 25%. So the size is down here. Well, that's a little bit too small. I don't think we want it that small. Let's try 40%. That's about better. I think that's okay. So now we have to decide where the portal goes, and I'm going to place it down in the bottom right corner here. So that's where the player has to reach, and we're going to name this sprite Portal. So P-O-R-T-A-L. There we go, Portal. It's always important to name your sprites, just as you name your costumes, because it makes your code much easier to read later on. Okay, so now we've got our second level and we've drawn our portal. What's the next thing? Well, the next thing will be over in the code part of our platform sprite. So head over to the platform sprite and then click code, because now we have several different costumes. It's important to make sure that when the game starts, it's the level 1 costume that's shown. So within the platform sprite, let's grab a green flag block, and then from looks, we'll just simply say switch costume to level 1. So there you see is the level 1, level 2, level 3. I haven't renamed costume 4 yet, but I will do later. So we'll just make sure that at the beginning of the game, when we switch to costume level 1. At the moment, you can see that it's level 2 that's displayed. But if I run the game, you see that snaps back over to costume 1 or level 1. So that's fine. Now we've got that. Let's go back to the portal. So I'm going to click on the portal here and add some code. Now basically what needs to happen here is the portal will need to constantly ask a question. Is the player touching the portal? That's all the portal needs to worry about. Is the player touching the portal? If it is, then the portal needs to do something, needs to send a message out so that the game knows to move on to the next level. But that's really all the portal needs to do. Ask constantly, is the player touching the portal? So if we want to do something constantly, then let's start our code with a green flag and then have a forever loop. A forever loop, remember, will do something constantly. Whatever is inside it, it'll be repeated over and over and over again the whole time the game is playing. And the portal needs to ask a question. Is the player touching it? So whenever we need to ask a question to find out what's going on or what's happening, we use an if block. So if something's the case, then what do we do? Now we have to ask the question here, is the player touching the portal? So we need to go to sensing to tell whether one thing is touching another. Here's the touching mouse pointer, which will change to player and drop that in the cartouche. So our question is if we're touching the player. So if the portal is touching the player, what do we do? Well, we need to do a couple of things. First of all, we need to make sure that we go up to the next level. But how are we going to keep track of which level we're on? The platform will need to know which level we're on so it knows which costume to show. So how do we keep track of something? Can you remember something from one of the previous lessons that I showed you helped us to keep track of bits of information? Can you remember the name of what that was? The answer is a variable. So well done if you got that right. So a variable, remember, is a labeled box, if you like, inside the computer that we can store a bit of information in. And that keeps track of a bit of information for us so that we know what's going on. So in this case, we've got 3 variables so far. We can keep track of the speed up and down. We can keep track of the speed left and right. And we can keep track of whether we're jumping or not. Now we need to keep track of which level we're on. So let's click Make a Variable and create a new variable called Level. Now it'll be important to make sure that at the beginning of the game, level is set to 1. It doesn't matter an awful lot where we put this, but I think it makes sense to put it inside the player code. So let's click on the player sprite. And right at the top, remember we have all these little variable blocks here, setting everything to 0 at the moment. Let's just pull this down a little bit for the moment and set the level to 1. We don't want level 0, of course. We want it to be level 1. And then just connect that back up. So at the beginning of the game, the level, this variable, is now storing the number 1. So we know we're on level 1. You can see in the game section on the right here that level is now shown as a variable. And this is one of those variables we probably do want to show. So I'm going to just move that slightly up to the top. And that'll keep track for the player what level they are currently playing. So now we have something that will allow us to keep track of what level we're on. We can come back to the portal. So the portal is asking this question, are we touching the player? Has the player and the portal managed to reach each other or contact? If they have, what do we do? Well, we're going to do 2 things. One is we're going to increase the level. So whatever the level is now, it's going to go up by 1. So we're going to change level by 1. So now whatever's in that little box called level is going to be one more than it was before. Now the player will also need to know what has happened. The player will need to know if it's a new level. Why? Because if it is a new level, they need to go from wherever they are right now back to this start position. So how do we do that? Well, what we can do is get the portal to send out a kind of message. Not one that the user will see, not a little speech bubble that the user can read, but sending out a kind of secret message that all of the other sprites in the game can see, so they all know what's going on. It's like sending secret messages in class. So the portal can send a message secretly to the player and the platform, so they both know that we've gone up by a level and they know what to do when that happens. So let's click on the portal. So we're still in the portal code here. And in order to send out a message, in order to be able to broadcast a message, we go into the events category and we find this block here that says broadcast message. Broadcast simply means send out, to send out a message. So we'll put this underneath the change level. And what message shall we choose? Let's click new message and we'll just simply do the message new level. So there we are, it broadcasts the message new level. Now that won't do anything for the portal, but the other sprites will know what's happened. So let's now put the code in excuse me, for the other two sprites. So what does the player need to do? Well, if we go into events, we can grab this block that says when I receive new level. So we can have a list of different messages here that could be happening. But when I receive that message new level, so when the portal shouts out or broadcasts that message new level, the player sprite will be able to hear that message. We'll be able to know that's being sent out, and they will need to know what to do. Now they only need to do one thing at this point. They simply need to go back to whatever the start position was, which is this blue block just here. These are the coordinates that the player jumps to when the game starts, and they're the same coordinates they need to jump to when they go into new level. So what I'm going to do is just for the moment bring down that code to separate it. I'm going to grab that blue block and I'm going to duplicate it. Remember, duplicate means copy. And I'm going to put the code back together like that. So now when I receive new level, the player is going to go back to the start position. Now what about the platform? The platform needs to do something as well, doesn't it? Because it needs to know if it's a new level, which level it is, and so which costume to show. So in the platform sprite, let's grab the when I receive new level, and now we need to ask a question. What is the value of the variable level? Remember, the portal is increasing the value of this variable by 1 each time the player touches it. So the platform will need to look inside the box labeled level, look at what number is in there, and use that number to change to the right costume. So let's have an if block in here. Excuse me. So we need to know if, and we don't need to do this in a forever block because this will only ever happen when this message new level is sent out. So whenever that message is sent out, the platform will then start asking these questions. So if what? Well, we need to know whether level is equal to something. So let's put an equals block in there from our operators, and we need the variable level on the left hand side. And of course we don't need to worry about level 1 because we switched to level 1 at the beginning of the game, so we don't have to worry about switching to level 1 at all, but we may need to check to see if we're up to level 2. So if level equals 2, we simply need to go to the looks category and switch costume to costume level 2. Now what about level 3? Well, we just carry on the same process. To add new levels, you only need to do 2 things now. The first thing is in the platform sprite, go to costumes and simply draw out some random new level. And in the code for the platform, we simply need to take this if block here duplicate it and put it directly underneath, and then simply say if level is equal to 3, switch to costume 3, and so on. That's all you need to do. So once you've started this, once you've got the portal set up and drawn, you've got this code here, you've gone to the player and added this block of code, all you need to do to add 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 levels is simply in the platform sprite, go to costumes and draw a new level, remembering to name each one, and in the code, copying that if block and just changing these two numbers here so that they match. So if we try the game now, let's just go to full screen and run the game. So we switch over to level 1. Let's see if I can actually do this. So now if I reach the, look at the top, there's level says level 1. So I'm going to move my player now onto the portal and two things happen. So the first thing, well, three things happen. First of all, the player has got shot back over to the start position. So there's the player there back over in the start position. We can also see that the platform costume has changed. So we're now looking at our new costume. And the third thing is you can see at the top, the variable level has changed to show that we're now on level 2. Now, of course, as you create new levels, you're going to have to test them again to make sure that they work. Are they too easy? Are they too hard? Are they just impossible? Is it possible for the player to get trapped somewhere so that that's not going to work? So you need to test your game. It's a tough job, but you'll have to do it. So test your game out, edit the levels if you need to. Let's just now check that this is working. So I'm on level 2. I've got a ridiculous level 3, I know, so it's not going to work. But if we jump onto the portal, bang, there we are. So again, we can see the player is shot back to the beginning position. The costume for the level, for the platform itself has changed, and the variable at the top level now has a 3 in it. Of course, at this point, if I was to jump into the portal again, what do you think would happen? Have a little think about the code. What do you think will happen when I jump into the portal? Give you a moment to think. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bang. Were you right? What just happened? The platform's changed. Sorry, the platform's not changed, beg pardon. Platform's not changed because we don't have a new costume. We haven't got an if question in the platform to say if we're on level 4. But the two things that did happen is the player got shot back to the start position and the variable level has gone up by 1. And in fact, that'll still happen. If I go into the portal again, we get jumped to the start position and level goes up to 5 and so on. So you can see that the code is working absolutely perfectly. We just don't have those costumes drawn yet. So what you'll need to do, assuming that you've got all this code working, is test your level, test that they work, test your portal works, and then start creating a few more levels. Now, once you've added a few more levels, we'll then start to look at some other bits and pieces that we can do to make the game more interesting, including adding an enemy.